Hi, and welcome back to Math Enhancement. In the series of video for Algebra, we are going to talk about word problems. So the first section would be solving word problems. What are the steps that we make to be able to successfully solve different kinds of worded problems? So how do we solve word problems? Number one is, of course, this is required that we read the problem very carefully so that, number one, we'll be able to understand, of course, what the problem is saying, what the problem is all about, and be able to identify the kind of word problem that is given to us. Of course, we have different kinds of word problems, like let's say we have number problems, digit problems, mixture problems, work problems, motion problems. So it's very important that we are able to classify the given worded problems so that we can pull out the necessary principles that we need to use to be able to solve the given problem to us. Okay, so number one is we read it carefully and identify the kind of problem. In that way, we will be able to identify all the steps or all everything we learned on how to solve for math problems starting from elementary, right? In elementary, maybe at grade 2, we are already introduced with the 5 steps in solving for math problems, and that is number 1, what is the given? Number 2, number 1, what is asked? Number 2, what are the given, di ba? Number 3, what is the formula? Number 4, what is the solution? Number 5, what is the final answer? Actually, in college, we still apply the same basic principle. Okay, being able to create a systematic way on how you solve for word problems will definitely make it easier for us to solve any problem we will be able to encounter. Okay, so upon reading it carefully, number 2 is you have to enumerate the given in the problem, including the relationships or the conditions that are mentioned. So being able to enumerate what are the given, assigning necessary variables to them or quantity symbols if there are, being able to place units correctly, that's a requirement when you write your given. Also, we should be able to write down the condition that is given or the relationships that are mentioned in the problem in such a way that they are written in symbols or in equations, okay, if necessary. Okay. Number 3 is, after you're able to identify the given and write the necessary conditions given in the problem, we should be able to identify what is being asked in the problem. Okay? Parang nga nangyari dito sa steps that I'm talking about, this is quite shuffled compared to the one we learned in elementary. But definitely, diba? Definitely, ito naman kasing dalawang ito, number 2 and number 3, can interchange sequence. Pwede namang mauna yung you identify what is being asked first, and then number 2 yung ano ba yung mga given, ano ba yung conditions na ibinigay. So, it could be vice versa. Maalin sa dalawa dito pwedeng mauna. Or they could be simultaneous, di ba? Upon identifying the given, you already know what is being asked in the problems. It's very important that you have the given, you know what is being asked, because by comparing the given and what's being asked, you'll be able to identify, okay? You'll be able to assess the necessary solution that you will be needing to be able to solve that particular unknown. So, kung kita mo kung anong nawawala at kita mo kung anong meron ka, then you'll be able to compare and think of ano ba yung mga formulas na pwede kong gamitin so that the question or the parameter being asked may be solved, di ba? And then after that, after figuring all of that, then we apply our mathematical skills or manipulation skills so that we'll be able to solve the problem and arrive at our final answer. So, understanding is very important in word problems. Understanding the problem, analyzing the problem is very important, and creating or translating the relationships given from words to symbols is also very important. That's why we go to translations of statements into symbols as a key in solving word problems. So, the key to solving word problems is being able to successfully transform the words or statements papuntang symbols. Okay? So, minsan kasi may mga mali tayong placement ng sign, mali ang placement ng equal sign, mali ang placement ng operations, mali ang placement ng mga conditions. So, yung dun pa lang sa placement, magugulo na agad yung solution natin. So, kailangan maingat tayo pagdating doon. At the same time, kailangan marunong talaga tayo because not being able to translate the statements into symbols, then everything will be useless. Okay? So, normally, there exist common words that suggest the use of specific basic operations. Okay? We know that there are specific words in word problems that suggest to us na, ay, okay, addition to. Ay, okay, multiplication yung gagamitin ko. And to give you examples, so, if the operation that is existing in the condition given is addition, then the words add, sum, together, greater than, more than, increase, total, combine, and end. Diba? These are things that suggest the use of addition in the condition or in the statement. Okay. Meanwhile, you also have subtraction with the common words such as subtract, difference, minus, less than, decrease, deduct, reduce, remove, an excess, diba? These are words that suggest na you will be using subtraction as an operation. Okay. Aside from that, we also have multiplication. So, medyo limited compared to the previous two operations. Pero with multiplication, of course, the word multiply, product, diba? As much that suggests you will multiply by, times, and multiples. These are suggestive of multiplication as an operation. For division naman, you have divide, quotient, average, ratio, out of, or split. Okay, so these are words that we have to familiarize ourselves. These words are not limited to the ones I've shown you, diba? Marami pang words na pwedeng gamitin sa problem. So it just goes down to you have to practice, have to look for different examples of problems that you haven't encountered before para lang mapalago natin yung alam na natin. So being able to encounter different kinds of problems makes learning more explored, 'di ba? Para ma-exhaust natin ng mas maayos kung ano pa ba yung mga possibilities na pwedeng lumabas doon sa word problems that we have. So in the next slide, in the next two slides, I have 13 statements here that we will be transforming into symbols just so I could show you how I personally do it. Okay? So the one I'm teaching you is my personal style of solution. It's up to you if you will adapt the same style or you will use your own. It doesn't matter as long as we're arriving at the same equation. There's no golden standard rule naman on how we're doing this. So, of course, everyone has a style wherein it's easier for them. So, you can always opt to use the ones you're comfortable with. Okay? So, let's start with number 1. So, I have here the title word problems. Let me just write here translation into symbols. Translation into symbols. So, let me have the first question. Let's get black for that. Okay. 2 more than thrice a certain number. Okay. Ako po, halimbawa, 5, sinabi, 2 more than a certain number. Halimbawa, ang sinabi sa atin is 2 more than a certain number. Okay? My style, okay, ibig sabihin, we are referring to, in this particular statement, we are referring to a number whose value is 2 more than a certain number. When I write these kinds of statements, ang ginagawa ko po is, pabalik ang pagsulat. Diba normally ginagawa na iba 2 more than a certain number, which is we do not know, we normally represent that as x. So they write that as 2 more than, which suggests addition, a certain number, which suggests an unknown. So 2 plus x, diba? 2 plus x. What I personally do is write this ng pabaliktad. Kumbaga, I start with 2, pero I write it on the rightmost side. More than comes before 2. Okay? 2 more than a certain number, x. This shows that yung number mo daw, let's say for example, you have a specific number, okay, na ang value niya ay mas malaki ng 2 kesa dito. Diba? It just, parang the flow follows, diba? The logic or the flow follows. Yung meron kang number na kung saan, ang value niya ay mas malaki dito sa number na to ng 2. Okay, that's how we translate it in Tagalog or in Filipino. Pero, this is what I do because doing translation per word, 'di ba? Per word based on appearance in the statement can parang kumbaga can change or may mislead you. It could mislead you or it could give you an incorrect way of translation. Halimbawa, wala tayong problema kapag addition, 'di ba? Kapag more than, there's no problem with more than because it's addition. Doesn't parang hindi tayo hindi critical yung sign kapag addition kasi it doesn't change the sign naman of the or the value of the given that you have. Pero paano kapag ang nakalagay dito is 2 less than a certain number? Kung ang style natin ng pagta-translate is yung kung ano yung naunang nabanggit sa statement, you might write this as 2 less than, which suggests subtraction, a certain number which is x. In this particular translation, this is wrong. Okay, because if you are going to translate the English statement to Tagalog, parang sinasabi niya na meron tayong number, 'di ba? Meron tayong number na ang halaga niya ay mas maliit, 'di ba? 2 less than a certain number, mas maliit doon sa certain number by a value of 2. So ibig sabihin, halimbawa, it should have been a certain number whose value is mas maliit doon sa x ng dalawa. So babawasan mo si x ng dalawa. Yun yung value ng number na hinahanap sa atin. So if I'm doing my style of solution, I'm writing it as 2. I'm writing it as 2 less than, I write that before 2. So I have 2 less than, that's minus, sa harap, a certain number. I write that x. I write in there x. Pero kung ang solution mo ay ganito, this is already wrong because it happens, or parang nga nangyari, mas malaki si 2 kesa kay x. 'Di ba? 2 is greater than x because it's impossible for you to have to come up with the correct answer if ganyan yung style natin, because this one does not translate to what this statement actually means. 'Di ba? A certain number, ito daw number na to ay mas maliit dito ng dalawa. And obviously, mali na agad. 'Di ba? Mali na siya agad. So, ang style ko po is I write first. I do not just follow based on the sequence of appearance, parang pabaliktad ako. Yung style ko ng pagsosolve, medyo pabaliktad. So, you can adapt that or you can choose not to adapt it. Depends upon how you understand how to write or translate your statements. Okay? So, for number 1, let me go back. Let me write it again. So, for number 1, 2 more than twice a certain number. So, 2 more than, di ba? 2 more than, sa unahan ko siya isusulat. Thrice a certain number. Of course, the word thrice means 3 times a certain number. So, that means 2 more than 3 times a certain number. So, we always represent our unknown by x. Okay? You can let x be the certain number, or you can actually use any variable you want that you can represent as the certain number being mentioned in the problem. Okay? Do not be confined with just x. You can use any letter in the alphabet to represent your unknown. Okay? Number 2, 5 less than twice a certain number. So, I'm going to write that as 5 less than. I'm writing it before 5. So, 5 less than twice a certain number. Twice means 2 times. So, 2 times a certain number. So, let's say a, which means I'm going to let a be equivalent to the certain number being mentioned. Okay? Number 3, the sum of 2 numbers is 10. Okay? There are 2 styles in representing your statements. Okay? You can use 2 unknown variables for your statement, or you can represent the statement in just a single variable. Pwede natin gawin ay ganito. I'm going to let x be one of the number, kasi dalawang numbers daw to eh. X be one of the number, at ang sabi dito ay, kapag in-add mo daw yung one of the number which is x, at saka yung isa pang number, ang sum nila ay 10. So that means, 10 minus x will be the other number, right? if one of the number is x, and the other number definitely would be 10 minus the value of x, kung ano man yung tira, yun yung other number natin. Kasi pag pinagsama natin to, you have x plus 10 minus x, you'll be able to cancel x, and you'll have a sum which is 10. It is actually recommended that you'll be able to represent your unknowns or the condition in the problems using just a single variable, because that will lessen the solution we will be making. Okay, but if you want, pwede naman po nating i-represent ito, 'di ba? You can represent this in two variables, so you can say x being one of the number, and then let's say gamit tayo ng ibang letter, let's say y is the other number. Tapos, the statement that says the sum of the two numbers is 10, ibig sabihin, pag pinag-add ko daw si x at si y, ang value niyan equal sa 10. At dito lalabas pa rin yung ginawa natin kanina. 'Di ba? If x is the other number, and if x is one of the number and y is the other number, you can solve for y, the other number, which is 10 minus x. So, lalabas pa rin. Ito pa rin yung representation, 'di ba? So, it depends upon your style. If you use a single variable when representing, or you use two variables when you are representing. Pero of course, we always recommend as much as possible, kung pwedeng single variable lang para mabilis mag-solve. Okay? Number 4. So, the difference of two numbers is 10. Okay, let's try to represent this in two different, in several ways. So, let's say you have x be one of the number. Ang difference daw ng dalawang numbers is 10. Okay? Dito, medyo confusing kasi baka isipin mo, pag sinabing difference, automatic, minus na agad yung gagawin natin, ano? Ang pwede natin gawin dito is, if x is one of the number, then I can write x plus 10 as the other number. Diba? In that way, pag sinabing ang difference, ibig sabihin, mas malaki yung isa ng 10. So, in that way, yan o, ito yung other number mo, mas malaki ng 10 kesa dun sa isa. Okay? Which means, this one is the larger number. Ito yung mas malaking number, and this one is the smaller number. Okay? Or, an alternative to this is, if you think the word difference means minus, pwede naman natin itong gawing x minus 10, being one of the numbers. Diba? And of course, x is the other number. So, ibig sabihin, yung isa mas maliit kesa dun sa isang number ng 10. Okay, you can use any of these two as a solution to this particular example. Okay. Number 5. Give the representation of 3 consecutive integers. So, when we're talking about integers, we're talking about the number line, right? Except the decimal. So, we're talking about whole numbers here. Let's say, ang integer mo is 1, 2, and 3. And as you can see, itong consecutive integers na to, ang difference lang nila is 1, diba? Ito, pag dinagdagan ko ng 1, it gives you 2. Si 2, pag dinagdagan mo ng 1, it gives you 3. So, you can write, let's say, x being the first integer. Okay, and since they are consecutive, and the difference between consecutive integers is 1, pwede mong gawing x plus 1 yung second integer, tapos gawin nating x plus 2 yung third integer, right? Because if I add 1 to x, you get x plus 1, that's your second integer. And if I add 1 again to x plus 1, I'll get x plus 2, that's your third integer. An alternative to this is, pwede nyong iset na second integer ay x, di ba? Pwedeng x yung second integer mo, tapos babawasan natin. So, para makuha mo yung first integer, edi x minus 1 yun. Ibig sabihin, 1 lang ang difference nilang dalawa. Diba? And then for the third integer, dito tayo magbe-base, dadagdagan natin siya ng isa, so it could be x plus 1. Okay, you can write it in this manner for the 3 consecutive integers, or you can write it in this manner. Okay, nasa sa inyo po yun. Number 6. Give the representation of 3 consecutive odd integers. Okay? So, for 3 consecutive odd integers, alam naman natin ang difference of odd numbers is 2. So, ibig sabihin, x could be the first number, x plus 2 could be the second number, and then, x plus 4 could be the third number. Diba? Let's say, for example, 1, 3, 5. Alam natin na ang difference ng 1 at 3 is 2, at 3 at 5 is 2 also. So, kapag dinagdagan ko si first number ng 2, so if my first number is x plus 2, I'll get the second odd integer. If I add 2 to the second odd integer, I'll get the third odd integer. So, from x plus 2, I add 2, I get x plus 4. That's my third odd integer. Okay? If I'm solving for number 7, the representation of consecutive even naman, that's 2, 4, 6 for example, and same with odd, ang difference lang ng even integers is 2 din. So, same representation lang. You can write it as x being the first, x plus 2 being the second, and x plus 4 being the third, since they are, their difference, the difference of even integers is 2 also. Ngayon, let's go to number 9 first, okay? If we're going to solve for the translation of number 9, ang nakalagay dito is, give the representation of an odd and an even integer. Kasi paano kapag yung problem mo, di ba? What if the problem that you have has two sets of sequence, meron kang even integers and odd integers. Paano ngayon natin i-represent ng magkaiba yung odd at even? Kasi dito, when you represented consecutive odd integers, it's x, x plus 2, x plus 4. And then when you represented consecutive even integers, it's the same. Paano pag magkasama sila sa problem? Eh, di ba, hindi naman natin pwedeng i-represent ng similar way yan because, di ba, because hindi natin masosolve yung unknown. So, it's best to represent an odd, okay, with 2x plus 1, okay, and an even is best represented by 2x plus 2. Okay, so, whatever x could be, diba, halimbawa, if x is 0, 2 times 0 is 0 plus 1 gives you 1. So, ibig sabihin, odd number yon. If x is 0, 2 times 0 is 0 plus 2, that gives you an even output. Okay, so, pwede nating baguhin itong representation mo ng odd and even dito. So, I can represent this one as 2x plus 1 for the first number. For the second number, I can represent it as 2x plus 3. Kasi diba ang difference ay 2. So, 2x plus 1 plus 2, you get 2x plus 3. And then 2x plus 3 plus 2, you get 2x plus 5. Yung consecutive even integers mo naman, you can start with 2x muna. Diba, lahat naman ng even numbers are multiples of 2. Diba? So, pwede kang mag-start with 2x as the first number. And then, add 2 na lang ulit to represent the next consecutive even number. So, that's 2x plus 2. And then, 2x plus 4 for the third consecutive even number. At times, it's safer to use this instead of these ones, diba? In your problems. Kasi minsan, or meron kasing mga pagkakataon na yung mga conditions ng isang odd, alam mo, may set of numbers ka na hinahanap na consecutive odd integers. Pag ginamit mo to, yung set ng odd integers mo, parang yung condition niya, pwedeng i-apply sa even. May makukuha kang equivalent value nun sa even set, sa set of even numbers na nagsasatisfy sa same condition. So, if that's the case, baka mamaya masolve mo yung even. Yan, tinatanong ay bigla kang malito, bakit ganun? Ito naman yung representation na tinuro, pero ba't hindi ko nakuha? So, kapag ganun case, it's safer to use this one because this representations already gives us an idea that the set is already odd because of these additions. And then the set are already even because of 2, 4, 0, 2, 4. Okay, so it's up to you whatever you will be using. Okay, but as a recommendation, I'll use this one just to be safe on all my solutions. So let's go back to the number we skipped. Let's go back to number 8. The number p exceeds a given number. Give the representation of the excess. Kano daw yung labis? So si p daw, labis daw siya, or mas malaki siya, di ba? P exceeds a given number. Give the representation of the excess. So for the excess, that is simply p minus x, di ba? Si p mas malaki kay x. So, para makuha mo yung difference, yon exceeds, di ba? Difference nila, kung gaano yung inilaki ng p kay x, that's p minus x. Okay? Let's go to number 10. The number n divided by d is equal to q and a remainder r. So, n daw is divided by d gives you q and a remainder r. How are we writing this in terms of fractions? Because if you write it as remainder r, we will not be able to solve that as an equation. So instead, we represent n over d, the quotient between n, the numerator divided by the denominator, as q, plus the remainder over the same denominator. So this is how you represent your quotient with remainders or your fractions. Okay? Let's go to the 11th example. Yan. Jess is twice as old as Dan. And Dan is 4 times as old as June. So we represent all their ages. Okay? You can represent, you can use different letters when you represent the names or the subjects in your statement. So let's say I use XYZ because there are 3 persons mentioned here. And let's say X is the age or X is Jess's age. Let's say Y is Dan's age. Okay? And let's say Z is June's age. According here, si Jess daw, which is X, Jess is twice as old as Dan. You have to remember that in translations of statements into symbols, the verb, okay, the verb always represents an equal sign. Always represents equal sign. Okay, the verb. So that's your be verb, your is, or kung ano mang verb ang babanggitin. Whatever the verb is, that is the time the equal sign shall appear. So sabi dito, Jess, di ba? Jess is, so that is an equal sign. So Jess, which is X, is, which is an equal sign, twice as old as Dan. So ibig sabihin, 2 times daw ng edad ni Dan. 2 times Dan's age is Y. Yun. So, Jess is 2 times ng edad ni Dan. Okay, next. Dan is 4 times as old as June. Dan, which is Y, is, di ba? Is represents verb, so that's equals 4 times ng edad ni June. So, that's 4 times edad ni June is represented by Z. Okay? There are times it's more convenient to use the initials of the subjects as your symbols. Instead of using the traditional XYZ, you can actually use the first letters of the names being mentioned. Pero, of course, in cases wherein parang may mga pangalan na parehas ang initial letters, kayo na po ang bahalang symbol. Kasi ako, for example, I can represent J as Jess, Dan as D, and June as N. And it's easier because when you solve Jess is twice as old as Dan. Diba kita mo na agad Jess is equal to twice ni Dan. And Dan is equivalent to 4 times ni June. And when you solve, you're solving for J, you're solving for D, you're solving for N. Diba? Yun yung makukuha mo dito kapag nag-solve ka. Pero with XYZ, you'll be able to solve for X, Y, and Z. Tapos pupunta ka pa dun sa unahan ng solution mo kung saan ka nag-represent, diba? Nag-let. Asahan niya, hahanapin mo pa. Sino nga si X? Si X ay si Jess. So, Jess ito. Si Y ay si Dan. Si N ay si June. Babalik ka pa. Instead of using the first letters of the names, pag nakuha mo yung sagot mo, automatic yun na agad yun. Kung J, edi si Jess yun. Kung D, si Dan yun. Yung N, si June yun. So, it's easier that way. Okay? Number 12. The perimeter and area of a rectangle, if one side is 8 feet longer than twice the other side. Okay. So, let's say, di ba length and width yun? Pwede ko namang i-represent yun as length and width. So, let's say width yung one side, of course, ng rectangle. Tapos yung length daw, this is the other side. So, one side, which is your length, is 8 feet longer than 8 feet. Longer means mas mahaba. So, mas malaki ng 8 feet. So, ibig sabihin, addition yun, longer. 8 feet longer than twice the other side. Twice nung kabilang side, which is the width. Okay, that's how I represent it. W is one side, one of the side, and L, which is the other side, is 8 longer than twice the width. Okay? Ang sabi dito is, how are we going to represent the perimeter? Of course, to be able to represent the perimeter, you must be able to know ano ba yung formula when solving for the perimeter of a rectangle. So, of course, for a rectangle, that's twice the sum of the length and the width. So, what you're going to do is just substitute these dito, diba? So, that's 2 times what's length? Length is equivalent to 2W plus 8. So, I'm going to write here 2W plus 8, which represents length. Ito yon. Okay? Plus, I have plus width, which is represented by W. So, pwede kong sabihin that the perimeter may be represented as simply, what's that? 2 times 3W plus 8. Pwede yan yung representation ko ng perimeter. For the area, we know the area of a rectangle to simply be the length times the width. So, ang gagawin nyo, substitute lang ulit. So, for the length, you have 2W plus 8. Okay? Ito yon. And then, for the width, you still have width pa rin doon. So, ito na yung sagot ko for the representation of the area. So, it's very important that you're able to represent in just a single variable because that will make our solution easier. Okay? Number 13. One angle of a triangle is 7 less than the first angle. Diba normally our triangles are named as ABC? So, you can just use ABC as the names or the representations of your angle. So, one angle of a triangle is 7 less than the first angle. The third is 5 more than the second angle. Represent the angles. So, one angle of a triangle is 7 less than the first angle. So, definitely this represents the second angle, diba? Because none is mentioned about the second. Ito kasi third, yung relationship na ng third angle. So, this one is your second angle, which is B. This is your second angle. This is your first. And then this one is your third. So, one angle daw, which is your B, okay, of a triangle is 7 less than. So, sa unahan ko yung susulat. 7 less than the first angle. Ano ba yung first angle ko? That's A. Okay. The third, which means the third angle, C, is, which means equal sign, 5 more than, so 5 more than, sa unahan ko yung susulat, 5 more than the second angle, which is B ulit. Represent the angles. So, my angles are A, diba? My angles are A, which is A pa rin siya, diba? Nothing changed because it's used as a reference. So, you still have A, and then this one represents B, A minus 7. And then C represents B plus 7. If you want, I can represent the first angle as A, the second angle as A minus 7, and then the third angle as, pwede kong palitan si B, kasi bumuo na ako ng relationship for B, that's A minus 7. So, isa-substitute ko yun dito. I'll get A minus 7 in place of B plus 5. Simplifying that, I get A minus 2. So, yun. Pwede mong i-represent ng ganito. Okay, you have several variables in your representation. You used A and B. Pero to make it easier, dapat lahat ng representations, or if necessary, dapat yung mga representations, isang symbol lang yung ginagamit. Like for example, the first angle uses A as a representation. The second angle is represented in terms of A, an expression that contains A as a variable. And then we were able to simplify the third angle as to be represented as by a statement that contains A then as a symbol. So, lahat ng ginamit nating symbol ay A. So, yun yung target natin, that when we represent, you'd be able to represent them using just a single variable so that it will be easier for us to work on our solution. And that is how you solve worded problems. We have to practice on the translations.